Good evening, Taira Chabah, Kol Taira Kula. As we cruise through the entire Torah Shabbat Perek, the Rambam in our lead, one Perek a day, the highlight of my day. So Geschmack zu lernen zusammen. Thank you so very much for all those joining us in person and virtually. Come, let's jump into Perek Gimel, which is going to discuss the time frame that Chachamim have given to Tefilla Shachris. The Rambam already in Perek Beis has laid the foundation that Chachamim set the times of davening around the times of Karbanas. Betzim, there's Shachris and Mincha. It's connected Karban Tamid, Shalboiker, and Karban Tamid Shalbein Arbaim. The communal daily offering, burnt offering, Oila, it's Oila Kulul Hashem. The morning, it's time we're going to see, and time of Mincha. And we said Arvis is connected, is Rishus because it's connected, Devarim Uptanim, that they would burn throughout the night. So let's see, and we brought a makkah from Tilim, Erev Vaiker, B'tzarai, Masicha. Zok the Rambam now, let's etch the times in stone. Halacha, Tefillah HaShachar, the Tefillah of the morning davening, Shmonaseh mitzvah, so the mitzvah begins, Lispalo im honei tzachama, together with the nates. The nates is the first, nates like nitzut, the first spark when you actually see the disk of the sun on our horizon. So, person standing here, it's a little lower, okay, the degrees you look in your calendar. But nates, that's when it starts. Uzmana ad soif shah revi'is, it's till the end of the fourth hour. If we take from nates until shkia, we split that into 12 hours. Those are 12 sha'ois, but they're not of 60 minutes per se. They're sha'ois maniyos, they're relative hours, depend on how long the day is, based on summer or winter, and where you are around the globe. I just came from Petersburg, where they have night, Sachakol, 2.5 hours. So we're having a chasana, and I posted the video. Having the chasana, he says, Chavra, 10 minutes is alois, we have to daven Maghrib. Yeah? Here we'll see it right now. So Shachris, you daven until the end of the fourth hour of the Shoy Zmaniyos. And, right, it's a third of the day, right? 4, 8, 12. So a third is 4 hours into it. He made a mistake. He slid through the fourth hour, and till chatzos yotzi de chayvas tefillah. He's still yotzi the chayva, the obligation of davening shachris. However, avlo yotzi de chayvas tefillah bezmana. He wasn't yotzi davening the chi of the mitzvah of the rabbanon should be in its time. Why? Shekshem shemitzvah tefillah mitzvah Torah. Just as Chacham that Torah has established the mitzvah of davening, with the heart, Kach mitzvah with the brain, Chacham attached to a specific time. Law Chachamim unevihim, as our Chacham and our prophets have established. Halacha base. Kfaramar. So this is Shachris, right? From Nates until Shah Revi'is is Tefillah Bismana. Until Chatzois is Tefillah, but not Tefillah Bismana. And the Noisa Kalim say the Rambam Bepashas means until the time of Mincha, so it's till more than Chatzais, a half an hour after Chatzais when time of Mincha begins. Halacha Beis. Faramarno. Now we're going to zoom into the time for Mincha. Shetfilas Mincha connected Karban Tam Shel Bein Arbaim. It's connected the Karban Tam Shel Bein Arbaim. Tiknus Mana. That's when they established the time. So now, interestingly enough, there were 2 times in which they brought the Karban Tam Shel Bein Arbaim. Generally, it was brought in the time of Mincha Ktana. Mincha Ktana means there's the Mincha when there's only a little bit of the day left, which is 9.5 hours into the day. 9.5 hour means 2.5 hours before Shkia, right? 9.5 to 12, 2.5 hours before the end, before Shkia. That's Mincha Ktana. That's when generally they brought the Karban Tamid Shel Bein Arbaim, and therefore Betz and the Rambam holds the best time to daven is Mincha Ktana, 2.5 hours before Shkia. However, there was a specific time in the year. There was a specific time, which was when Erev Pesach fell out on Erev Shabbos, right? And everybody has to finish shechting their Karban Tamid Shel. Everyone has to finish shechting their Karban Pesach and bringing it home and roasting it before Shabbos comes in. So they would be makdim the Karban Tamid Shel Bein Arbaim, which was meant to be the final Karban before the Karban Pesach, the final Karban that closed off all the Karbanos of the day. They were makdim it to a half an hour after Chatzos. And therefore, being that you're able to bring the Karban Tamid Shel Bein Arbaim in specific instances, which is the Erev Pesach, Shcholis, Erev Shabbos. You're allowed to bring it a half an hour after Chatzos. That is also an appropriate time when one is able to daven mincha. That's called mincha gdoila. The Rambam looks at it as second best. Let's see it inside. On every regular, ordinary day, 9.5 hours into the day. Tiknus mana. Therefore, they established the time from the 9.5 hours into the day. That's what we'll refer to as mincha ktana. However, being that in the Erev Pesach, when it fell out on Erev Shabbos, 6.5 hours into the day, right? Chatzos is 6, half of 12, half an hour later, 6.5 hours, and a half an hour after Chatzos. Amru. For this reason, he said, someone that did daven after that time is yaitza. Being that you're yaitza at that point, once that time hits, you've already entered the Zman of Mincha, and we'll soon see the halachas that apply. Once the Zman of Tefilla has come, there's certain prohibitions. You're not allowed to start to various things. Halacha Gimel. Now, for this reason, Nagu, very interesting minhag. Nagu anashim harbe l'spal gdoila uktana. They daven twice mincha every day. Va'achas rishos. One was connected to chayva, and one was connected to rishos, because there's the two time frames here. One is what was every day brought the carbon times. Now the Rambam is going to point out, if you're doing that, make sure that the rishus, the optional carbon or the donation carbon tefillah, should be the first one, because that's not the regular time that they would have mincha. It's only in that once a year, or once in a few years, when that was the kviyas. Some of the goyim have directed. If you're doing one of the rishos, do the gdoilo rishos. The one, there's a lot of time. That means there's 6.5 hours after Nate. That's the svara yeshara. Because that is connected to something that's not consistent. If you happen to daven the gdoila and you had intent in mind that this is the chayva, this is now being yotze tefillah of mincha. So lo yispal ktana, then he has to daven the mincha ktana, the later mincha. He has to daven that when he waits. He has to wait until 2.5 hours before it says before shkia, and that one daven rishos. And we already said that if you're davening rishos, you have to add something a chiddush, so it should be noticeable that it's a carbon nidava. Halacha dalet. Now holamadata. In summation, Dr. Rambam. Shezman mincha gdoila is mishei shaysu mechza teisha shaysu mechza. It's from 6.5 hours shayzmani into the day until 9.5 hours. Vizman mincha ktana, then begins the time of mincha ktana, and that's miteish shaysu mechza. For how long? So now, when we said there's left of the day from mincha ktana until shkia, there's left 2.5 hours. Cut that in half. That's an hour and a quarter, right? An hour and a quarter plus an hour and a quarter is 2.5 hours. So an hour and a quarter later begins plaga mincha. Plaga mincha is half of the time of mincha, and therefore, be'etzim, you should only daven. It's a very small time frame according to the more stringent opinion. You have from the beginning of mincha ktana is 2.5 hours until an hour and a quarter. Very little. And left for the day you have until to daven mincha, because according to Rabbi Yehuda, plaga mincha, that's when the zman of ma'ariv begins. Time of mincha can't be time of ma'ariv. Now we'll soon see that Rabbi Yehuda is not the only opinion. Zakter. There's an hour and a quarter left. But the truth is, at the end of the day, you don't have to rely on opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, and you could daven mincha until the end of the day, until shkia. However, you can't make tarta the sasa, which means you can't daven mincha after plaga mincha and then daven ma'ariv according to your Yehuda before shkia. Now, tefillah samusafim. What's with the zman of musaf? Doctor, the beginning time is after you finish shachar. So regardless when it is, you start tefillah musaf. Ad sheva shoyz b'yam, until 7th hour. That means a half an hour after mincha gdoila. 7th hour, zman is into the day. If you're davening after 7 hours, even though kivyachol this is negligence, because the etzem, you were able to bring it throughout the entire day. Halacha vav tefillas erev now for the time frame of tefillas ma'ariv afal pi she'eina chayva, as we have said that be'etzem ma'ariv is not connected an obligatory carbon. It's connected a bottom of darim that still had to be burnt to the carbon times of ben arbayim, that they were able to be burnt throughout the time. So even though it's not chayva, we said we've accepted this as obligatory over ourselves. From Shkia, according to the second opinion, from when nightfall, from Shkia until Ad Shial Amad HaShachar, until sunrise. Now Amad HaShachar is when you start seeing light. It's before nates. Now, that a person should complete it right before Shkia. We're noyig both of these after Shkia. We're noyig after Shkia you start davening Ne'ilah, and Ma'ariv we daven after it says. Anyways, halacha zayin. Hamispalel tefillah koidim zmana. If one daven the tefillah before the time frame has begun, for example, you daven mincha before Sheish Shais Umechta, before mincha g'dayla, lo yotzi dechavas, you have not fulfilled your obligation. V'choizim mispalel ezim zmana. You have to again repeat the tefillah in its time. So big brachas, Allah zach neibish's name and vain. You didn't daven. Daven again. Now, if he daven b'shas atchak, he was pressed for a time, he had to leave with the caravan, and he daven la'achar shalom ad hashachar. After, it's called the rising star, but I'm saying that the beam of light comes up, which means the disk of the sun didn't hit the horizon yet, but it's lower down, and being that it's round, you can see already the light coming up. At that point, your yaitz already be the Evan. B'yesh l'espal tefillas, arvish leili, Shabbos, be'erev Shabbos, koyd mishtishka chama. Very interesting. You're allowed to be mekabel Shabbos. You're allowed to daven ma'ariv of leili Shabbos with Shabbos by night. You're allowed to start davening it earlier. So it's not Shabbos yet. Mekabel Shabbos, daven ma'ariv earlier, according to Rabbi Yosef from Plaga Mincha. Koyd mishtishka chama before Shkia. V'chein yispal arvish l'matzah Shabbos b'Shabbos, and you're allowed to say ma'ariv of matzah Shabbos in Shabbos. And the reason for this is because Arvis is Rishus, therefore it's Rishus, and Bismanam are the Rabbanim, therefore Ein Medaktik and Bismanam, we're not Makbid. When do people rely on this? Very interesting. An Oinin on Shabbos, the Etzem, there's no on English, there's no Abelis on Shabbos, but once Shabbos is out, he's not allowed to drink wine. So what do? You daven Ma'ariv early, you daven Ma'ariv after Plag, but before Shkia, so it's really Shabbos for all malachas. You're not allowed to do anything malachas. And being that it's still Shabbos, you're allowed to make Havdalah on wine, even though he's an Einan, because Shabbos is not out yet. Later, he ready to have mine. So that's when it plays out. But the scenario is interessant. Both of them is providing it doesn't override the deraisa of reading Kriya Shema b'shach b'cha, right? So even those that daven ma'ariv early on Shabbos, the Mekabel Shabbos early, many little shtetlach, American shtetlach, that they won't be able to gather the minyan twice. So they come before Erev Shabbos, they daven mincha, then they daven ma'ariv mugdam, and then they have to remember about to reach Krishma after it says when it's completely night. Now, halacha ches, kol misha avar alav zman tefillah v'lo yispalo, past the time of davening Shemoneh Esrei and he didn't daven. If it's been amazing that this was intentionally, he let it slide by, he didn't forget, he wasn't, out of commission. It was intentionally, ein letakana, there is no way to remake that davening. Be'eina meshalam, there's no way to fill in for it. However, b'shoigig, if it was by mistake, since he didn't realize the time, asher anos, he was of course, he was shikir, he was sick, he was in a coma, it was epis, oitarod, or he was so busy, he wasn't able to be mechaben Shmoneh, then we do give him an opportunity to fill in for that davening. We'll see, he repeats another Shmoneh Esrei right after the Shmoneh Esrei of the closest tefillah to the one he missed. Now, he's going to daven two Shmoneh Esrei, for example. If he missed Shachris, he's going to daven two Shmoneh Esrei mincha. The first one is for the mincha, the current mincha, and the second one is the Ashlama for Shachris. And it's important to note, la'alacha l'maisa, that this is only samach l'tefillah, which means if you forgot, you did, Rahman al a person missed Shachris, and then mincha, it came mincha time, he davened one Shmoneh Esrei and went about his merry way, and he forgot that he didn't make Ashlama. Even though it didn't start Zman Ma'ariv, he can't be Mashlam. It has to be within, once he's davening Mincha, then he's allowed to be Mashlam. Or Magdin tells Zman, and afterwards you daven, you fill in for the missing davening. Ketzad, how does it, and the Rambam shows how does it play out? He gives an example. A person didn't daven Shachris, and now half day passed, right? It passed Chatzos. Yispal mincha shtayim. He davens 2 tefillas mincha rishoyna, as we said. The first Shemoneh Esrei is connected tefillas mincha, the timely Shemoneh Esrei. Vashniya tashlum shachris. The second one is filling in for shachris. Tov lo yispal mincha ad sheshaka chama. What happens if he made a mistake and didn't daven mincha until shkia? Then yispal arvis shtayim. You could daven 2 Shemoneh Esrei for ma'ariv. Rishoyna again will be for arvis, for the current tefillah that you have to be davening. Oshniya tashlum mincha. Tov lo yispal arvis ad shalom ad shachar, for example. You didn't daven ma'ariv until Alois. Mispal shachris time. You do daven twice shachris. 2 Shemoneh Esrei rishoyna shachris. First one is for the morning. So vashniya tashlomei shach arvis. Daven filling for last night's missed ma'ariv. Halacha yud. Tov lo yispal. If he made a mistake and he didn't daven, lo yitfila zu, the lo yitfila smuchala. This is a battling from Battling Land. He missed shachris and then he missed mincha. The only one he can repeat and fill in for, again, providing was a shoygig or a shoygig or a anos or tarot, then he's able to only be mashal the mincha that he missed by davening ma'ariv twice. Ketzad, for example, if he missed both shachas and mincha, mispal arvis time rishoyna will be for arvis, for that current tefillah. There's no way to repeat shachas. Why? Shekvar Ovar Zman, the time has passed, as we know the famous rule. Over Zman Abadal Kabbalah. Bein B'shar Tfilos. V'chein B'shar Tfilos. This will also apply to all of that. And the final halacha for today. What happens if you have 2 tefillas and you want to know which one goes first? The only heichetimtza that this could happen is Shal Mincha V'Shal Musafin. Why? Zman Mincha begins half an hour after Chatzos, and Musaf is from when you finish Shachris. And they have 1/2 an hour betzim that they overlap. Mincha starts half an hour after Chatzos until Plaga Mincha, until Shkia, and Musaf is meant to go until Sheva Shois. For that half an hour they overlap. Lamaisa, many Reiv Minyan of Binyan of Bnei Yisrael daven Musaf after Chatzos and after later. But if they overlap, which one comes first? Mispal Shal Mincha. V'acharkach Mispal Shal Musafim. First daven Mincha, and this the halacha is azay if you're davening with a minion. If you're davening privately, it could be it's different. V'acharkach Mispal Shal Musafim. Why? Because Tadar Kodim Mincha is every single day. Musaf is only on Shabbos or Rosh Chodesh and the like. Yom Tov. V'yesh Misha Meir Sheinoisim B'tzibur Kain. You don't do this B'tzibur K'desh Lo Yitu. The Punkt Farket. You don't do this when you're doing B'tzibur. They shouldn't mix up this darim, and therefore B'tzibur you should do the appropriate davening. First you do Musaf, and then you do Mincha. Thank you so very much for being with us. It is such an honor, kavod zchus, to learn together with all of you Chashva participants. The Chabur of Kol Torah Kula, cruising through entire Teresh Bal Peh with the Rambam in our lead. Yeshikoyach Rabbi Nemirovsky.